Hello there and welcome. It's Juliana Michaels and welcome to my channel. In this video, I'm sharing one of the cards I created for the recent Holtz Sizzix 2024 Halloween release. Tim went back to the vault and pulled together 5 wickedly awesome die sets from some of his older ones that are now retired. I love that he has brought some of these classic designs back for those of us who don't have them or for those of us who just want to add to our Holtz collection. This card is packed with some wickedly fun mixed media techniques using distress inks, distress pastes, and distress spritz. As always, feel free to pull from your stash, but if you are interested in any of the products I'm using in this video, you can find the supply list with links in the description box below. Shopping through those links supports me, and I really appreciate that so very much. I hope it is officially my favorite time of the year, Halloween crafting time, or at least one of my top 2 favorites because Christmas and Halloween are pretty much on the same level for me, and that will be coming up very soon as well. So I am in full happy crafting mode for sure. So for this card, I'm going to be working with some of the new Holtz Sizzix Halloween dies, and Tim for this year has gone back to the vault once again and pulled out some wickedly fun Halloween designs from the past. The dies I'm going to be working with for this card is the Vault Wicked, Vault Fright Night, and Vault Portraits. I'm also going to be working with this Bat Stencil, and then I've got several stamps I'm going to be working with. I'm going to be using this Life of the Party stamp set, specifically the sentiments on this set, so you could use any stamp set for the sentiments. And then I'm going to be using Examination, Undertaker, and the Obscure as well to do some stamping on the background of my card. The distress inks I'm going to be working with are Wilted Violet, Twisted Citron, Black Soot, and Lost Shadow. And I'm going to be using Shadow Gray archival ink, so you just need some sort of permanent waterproof ink, and this is just a really nice light gray color. I'm going to be using Texture Paste Black Opaque, and then I'm also going to be using the new Distress Spritz, and the colors I've got here are Wilted Violet, Twisted Citron, and Spiced Marmalade. The paper I'll be working with throughout this card for the background and with the die cuts is just Distress Watercolor cardstock, and specifically just because that can handle all these different mediums that I'm going to be working with. So to get started, I'm just going to begin with doing some stamping on the background of my cardstock here, and I'm just using a little bit of a temporary adhesive from scrapbook.com to kind of help hold my paper in place along with the magnets. This just kind of lets me keep it towards the middle of the stamping platform so I don't have to move the paper around, hopefully very much. But I'm just going to be using like a variety of stamps from these different stamp sets and kind of creating like a collage of stamping across the background here. And I'm just kind of pulling out the different stamps that I think I want to use and kind of laying out kind of where I think I might stamp some of these. And maybe I'll even put that one on there, put that one underneath there, and then this on top of that. And maybe that little one in there. All right, so that kind of gives me a little bit of a start here. So I always just kind of like to kind of play around, get an idea of what images I want to work with, and then just start stamping. You can always add more or less as you're going along here. And I'm just using the permanent archival ink here. This is Lost Shadow. You could certainly use a darker color if you like. I just didn't want the background image to take away from anything that I'm going to be doing with the die cuts or the texture paste. So that's kind of something I like to think about when I'm doing the stamping on the background is, you know, how much do I want it to, you know, stand out. That'll work. In fact, I think scoot that over just a little bit more. There we are. And then I'll just keep repeating this stamping here. And I need to get a re-inker for this ink pad. It's getting a little light on me. Plus then when you're stamping on watercolor paper, it always seems to kind of suck the color up a lot faster. So there we go. Lied about moving that. I'm going to move it around a little bit here. So I just kind of like to play around with creating patterns with the collage, like a collage type style here. So and I feel like I still need a little something here, so I'm gonna go back to these stamp sets and see what will be a good fill in there. This one looks pretty good. All right, so there is the kind of collage stamped background, and you can keep adding more if you like. Just kind of go till you have it kind of mostly filled in and you're happy with how it looks. In fact, now that I'm looking at it again, I'm going to add a little bit. Be there. I'm just going to kind of fill those little spots in a little bit more. Okay. And there we are now. I think that looks better. So now with the background, we're going to do a little bit of some ink smushing. So I'm going to use the Black Soot Distress ink. And I'm just going to smush my ink pad down onto my craft mat. And I'm going to spritz that with a little water till the ink kind of beads up there. And then now I'm just going to smush my paper into the ink, kind of getting it across the paper here. And then I'm going to dry that before I continue with it. You could also use the like a distress spray if you wanted to go a little bit faster with just adding some color to the background, but I don't know. I just always like the ink smushing. It's a little bit, I don't know, the look of it I just like better sometimes than doing like a sprayed background. And just kind of dry that till it's mostly dry at least. And then you can go back in and, you know, dip down into what's still there. If you need more, you can always add some more ink to your craft mat. And then I try to kind of not dab back into an area that I went into already. So like this was dry, so then I could smush back into the wet stuff. And so by going in layers with this, so like you smush a little, then you dry, and then you add some more, and then dry again, you start building up the layers. And that's where you really get a lot of that depth and interest in the backgrounds, is doing it in layers and repeating it. All right, so now I'm just gonna do a little bit of stencil work, and this is just a sticky grid mat. And I'm just gonna get my paper kind of stuck on there and then get my stencil down. And I'm using this bat stencil, and then we're gonna be adding the black texture paste through it. Now, you can use any stencil you like. You don't have to use this bat stencil. Tim has tons of stencils that are either Halloween themed or just, you know, something kind of cool that kind of fits that Halloween theme. And then you just kind of stick it down on here. Now, word of warning, if you do end up ever getting one of these sticky mats, this is the one by Ulta New. They are so sticky that if you lay this down with this print on this, it will actually peel off that print, which is kind of crazy, but you can kind of see it here on this side of my mat. Doesn't really bother me, but does kind of remind me to let people know if that's something that would bother you. So just gonna kind of sticking the palette knife down there into the black paste and getting it onto kind of this bottom side here. And then I'm just going to apply that over the stencil on this kind of upper corner here. There we go. Just gonna peel that off a little. And then I'm going to position it over here. Now, for this corner, I'm going to kind of hold it up because I don't want this to lay down into that wet paste. If that is a problem for you or you're worried about it, let this dry and then do the paste over here on this side. Oops. Like I just did right there. I need to get some more paste on here before there we go. All right, well, let's get that stencil back in place here. And then again, just kind of holding that up with my fingers, and then I'm gonna apply the paste here, kind of along this lower corner, opposite of the one we just did. Okay. Pull it off. And then you want to make sure you get your stencil into some either like a tray of water or wash it off right away. You don't want to let that paste dry on there. And then I've just got a little piece of press and seal over my jar here to just kind of help keep the air out of it and try to help it last a little bit longer. Because once these get open and air gets in there, they don't last forever. So if you bought paste and you're not using it and you've opened it, you need to use it because it will not last forever. And so now we're just going to set this to the side and let that paste dry. All right, so now while the paste is drying, I'm going to work on the die cuts. And off camera, I die cut the spider web and the witch and the little spider and the word wicked using the various die sets here. And I cut 2 of the wicked and 2 of the spider, and I'm going to glue those together to layer them just to make them a little thicker, especially because these are kind of thinner pieces here, and it just makes them a little more sturdy when I'm attaching them to my card. These are all cut from distress watercolor cardstock. Again, because I just wanted something that was a little heavier duty and that can also take the way we're going to color these. So now to color the die cuts, we're going to do some ink smushing, just kind of like what we did for the background. And so I'm going to start off with the Wilted Violet here and the sentiment piece. And I've already glued together the two layers, so it's just a little bit thicker now. And I'm just going to tap that into the ink. And I want to get a nice good coverage of it here. Yeah, I'm going to give that a dry. And if that kind of holding that gets to be a little bit warm, you could also put it on like a heat resistant, you know, craft mat of some sort, or this is a silicone kitchen trivet. You can also hold it with tweezers, just so, you know, something to protect your hands if they're sensitive to the heat, for sure. And we're going to dip it again. It's like, you can see like there's some areas where you're not getting really any ink. You can always use your finger to add some. And the ink smushing just kind of gives it a cool effect, I think, because of the way it just kind of gives you that really cool distressed effect. And now we're going to do the same thing for our little witch here. We're going to use Twisted Citron. And smush that. And got ink on my hands here, so I'm going to make sure and kind of wash those off a little bit. Smush her in here. Smush some of that other end here that I didn't get anything on. There we go. I'm gonna dry. And just like with the background, you can, you know, repeat this ink smushing as many times as you like to build up the layers and textures. But you just want to make sure it's mostly dry before you go back in again, because otherwise it just blends in with what's wet already, whereas if it's dry, then it kind of adds that extra layer of color and texture and dimension. So there you go. So you could, you know, keep adding, you know, if you want to get this a little darker, you can do another layer of ink smushing. Just add some more ink and spritz again, and then just dab again. And you can just see how it's already getting darker there. And I'm going to take where the dress is here, I'm going to kind of smush that down into some of these little droplets and pick some of those up where it was dry. Just add a little more interest. Now for the little spider, instead of ink smushing, I'm just going to use this tiny blending brush and just apply the ink directly to the die cut here. Kind of pouncing it on. This helps get transfer that ink over onto there really nicely. There's our little spider. And then now we're going to do a little ink smushing with the spider web using the Lost Shadow. Just so that it's not just plain white. It just adds a little bit of color there. Okay, so there's a look at that. Now to add a little bit of Halloween festive fun to the die cuts, I'm going to spritz this with the coordinating distress spritz. So this is Wilted Violet. I'm just gonna give it a little shake, make sure all the pearl is dissolved into the liquid really well. And then I'm just going to give this a light spritz here. And it'll just add a little touch of shimmer to the paper. This obviously is totally something you can skip if you don't want that. But I personally love how that looks on there. And I'm just cleaning off the nozzle here so it doesn't get clogged up on me. And then, yeah, and then we're gonna dry this here real quick. And then you can kind of see, just adds a little touch of shimmer. So like in person, it adds a really nice effect to the paper. So just another little detail. So now we're gonna do the witch, and for that one, I'm gonna use the Twisted Citron. So get it mixed in here good. I'm just flipping it over because you see how it's kind of, you can see where some of it's maybe kind of pooled in there a little bit. So just want to make sure I get all that mixed up so that when I flip it upside down, turn it around, it looks like everything's moving and mixed in really well. So now we're going to give this a spray. Again, just cleaning off that nozzle so it doesn't clog on me. And then we'll dry this one. And then again, you'll see that little bit of shimmer it adds. And then once that's completely dry, you're not going to be wiping off any of this onto your hands or anything. So it's a little bit on there for me handling the inks, but there's nothing wiping off on my hands right now. So yeah, again, just adds a little bit of shimmer and shine to it. Now our background is dry, so we're gonna go back to that and we're gonna add some splatters to this using the Distress Spritz. And since I just used the Twisted Citron, I know it's mixed in really nicely. And to do the splattering, I'm going to just unscrew the cap here, and that liquid will be on the tip of this straw, and I'm just gonna tap it down onto the background here. Kind of go in different directions. And I'll give that a little dry. And I'll do the same thing with the Wilted Violet. Just making sure it's mixed in good there. If you want to rotate it just so your splatters are kind of going in different directions. And if you want like bigger splatters, you can shake it down like that, or you can tap and get kind of smaller ones. So it's kind of really up to you. And I'll give that a dry. I kind of recommend drying in between the splattering just so that, because if the colors are wet and then you add another color on top of it and it's wet, those colors are going to mix and give you a different color, which maybe that would be fine, but that's not really what I'm going for here. So now there is the background so far with the Wilted Violet and the Twisted Citron. And then I'm going to do just a little bit of some spiced marmalade. Again, just going to make sure I get that mixed in there good. Okay, and now we're going to add the spiced marmalade. And then give that a dry. All right, and there is a look at our Distress Spritz splattered background. So the last thing I want to do to kind of finish off this background is just do a little ink blending with some black soot and a blending brush around the edges. And I find these kind of brushes to be a little better than the foam ones if you're working over the paste, because I feel like the paste kind of tears up the foam just a little bit more than normal. Plus this kind of gets in and around that paste a little bit better too, I feel like. So here is a look at the finished background. So here's a look at the finished card. I trimmed the background down to 4 by 5 1/4 inches and then adhered it to a piece of plain white cardstock cut to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches. And then I used a mix of collage medium and double-sided foam adhesive to adhere the die cuts to the card. And then I added the sentiment, which I just stamped with some black soot archival ink onto some white cardstock. And then I used the small, tiny foam blender to ink the edges of that and then adhered it to the card with some foam tape. Hope you enjoyed seeing how this wickedly fun card came together using the new Tim Holtz Sizzix 2024 Halloween release. I can't wait to see what you are inspired to make using these new dies. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you can join me on a more regular basis. Hit the like if you enjoyed this video, and if you want to join me on my other social media platforms, you can find the links to those in the description box below. Also, feel free to leave me a comment if you have any questions or if there's something you'd love to share with me and our community. I'll see you in the comments below and in the next video. Until next time, stay crafty, my friend.